I should have 6 people there. Grace.
Hello.
Hey, glad you made it. Hey. I can see it's 10 o'clock, but I have a 3-minute Zoom rule. I'll give people 3 minutes, maybe even a couple more on the first day to show up. So. All almost here. There's at least 2 or 3 students who can't be here because they're moving in today. So are you guys all on campus or not yet, or someplace in between?
Yeah, I moved in a couple days ago.
I move in tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. How'd the move-in go, Marcy? Was it all right?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Didn't really have too much to bring because I was here last semester too. So just like bringing in a couple bags.
Yeah, good. Well, I hope it goes smoothly for everybody. I think the start of the semester is going to still be a weird one, but we'll make the best of it, and it'll be good. It'll be okay. I'll give people a couple more minutes to show up, but actually, let me just do this while I'm waiting. Yeah, this is up to the top. So I'll introduce myself, but while we're waiting, I'm always looking for good recommendations for things to watch or to listen to or to read or whatever over the break. So what was the best thing you watched or listened to or read over the break? You can type it in the chat and see if we can come up with anything good. I'll put mine in there in a second. If I figure this out. No, you don't want that. The Mandalorian. I couldn't get into it. I watched about half of the first season, and then I don't know. I have a couple people whose whose Star Wars opinion I particularly respect, and they actually think it's one of their favorite of all time among the Star Wars canon, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get into it. New Taylor Swift album. I like it. So over the break, in another life, I worked in construction. And so I have an old house, and so I'm remodeling a bathroom and a laundry room. And is that the one called Folklore or something like that? Is that the one with Exile where she sings with Bon Iver?
She actually made another one.
Oh, another one
there's two now. Yeah, they're both pretty new though.
That one with, I think it's called Folklore or something like that, where she sings with Bon Iver. For some reason, that one came up on like my feed, and I like that song a lot. It's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it's a good song. Yeah.
Master Chef. I like Master Chef. That's a good one. Okay, well, we're 10:04. I think we're mostly here, so we'll get started. Thanks for joining me. I'm sorry we kind of have to meet this way. I'd love to meet you in person this week, but it's not going to work out that way. And so this will be good. We're going to actually meet in person next week for the first time. We're going to start our first experiment. And so we need to sort of hit the ground running. And my hope today in this meeting is to give you a sense of what's going on. So the first thing I have to remember to do is record this. Oh, I guess I already am recording. Who knew? That's okay. Yeah, I'm recording. So away we go. Let me tell you a little bit about the course. Everything I'm going to tell you here today is up on Canvas. Specifically, most of the information is up in the syllabus, so you should check that out. I'll also post all of these slides to Canvas in the Start Here module so that you can check any of these things out. If you have any questions about anything, you can email me. This is my email address, Peterson J. Note it has the J, so make sure you put that on there. And one of the things I like about this course is we'll get a chance to know one another and work together throughout the semester. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about me. My background is in physical chemistry, which is a combination of physics and chemistry. I've done my training half in physics lab and half in chemistry labs. I've been at Geneseo since 2009. Before that, I was at the University of Colorado. So this is the University of Colorado, and this is the building I worked in. Did graduate school at the University of Rochester. That's how I got to know the area. Before that, I was at Wheaton College, which is a small liberal arts college in Chicago. And then I actually grew up in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota, which is a lot like the Adirondacks in many ways. More water, less mountains. Anyways, that's me. Some other contact information. So as I said, here's my email. I'm going to have office hours on Wednesdays from 1 to 2:30 and on Thursdays from 1 to 2:30. I'm also happy to schedule meetings outside of those timeframes if they don't work for you. All the office hours will be conducted via Zoom unless we set something else up. And the signups for those are available on the Start Here module of Canvas. If you haven't, poke around on Canvas and make sure you can find that stuff. There's one that says office hour links, and it will take you to my Google Calendar, and that's how you can find me. Again, if anything ever comes up, I'm always happy to answer questions via email as well. Don't ever hesitate to send me a note and say, I'm confused what's going on. I usually try and answer within 24 hours, and we'll keep active tabs on that. All right. About the course. So the course was originally structured as a hybrid course, and the idea was half of the experiments were going to be in person and half of the experiments were going to be remote. But the enrollments in our section are low enough that we'll actually be able to meet in person for an experiment each week. And between you and me privately, I think this is actually a much better option. I strongly prefer doing in-person experiments, and I think that this will be a better experience for you. So the plan is to meet in person for all students each week. As I mentioned, I think that we're still going to be dealing with some fallout from COVID and other sort of weirdness this semester. So a situation may arise in which you can't attend class for whatever reason. What I want to affirm to you is that if this happens, you won't be penalized in any way. There are multiple pathways to allow you to continue the course. We do have online versions of many of these experiments, and so we can find a way for you to continue in the course if you can't be here in person. This is my general sort of statement to students about COVID, is that we need to take care of each other this year and this semester. And I think that students did an excellent job of that last semester, and I expect that it will go well in this coming semester. So if you're feeling unwell, if you're not sure whether you should come to class, if you were potentially exposed to somebody or whatever it might be, just don't come to class. That's a-okay. I will be supportive, flexible, and do whatever I can do to help you be successful in the course. The caveat with all this is if any of that stuff comes up, it's extremely helpful to be in communication with me. The sooner the better. So be in communication with me, and we can figure out any issues that we need to resolve. I should point out too, I'll pause a little bit and ask for questions, but it's hard to see questions on Zoom. So if you have them, why don't you just wait, and I'll pause and ask for some questions along the way. Why are you taking this course? Probably it's required for your major, but it actually is a really nice introduction to some what I would call wet chemistry techniques, bench chemistry. What I want to point out to you in particular is down here, the required materials. And because we're beginning our first experiment next week, there's some things that you're going to need to complete next week's lab. We are legally not allowed to let you in if you don't have some of these things. So the first is the laboratory manual. You can buy that at Sundance Books on 106 Main Street in the Village. So head up there and get a copy of that. You'll need a pair of safety goggles, not safety glasses, a lab coat, and a quad-ruled notebook. Those first 4 things are needed next week. So make sure you get your hands on those things. I'm at home today, so I don't have copies of these things to show you, but I think you'll be able to figure it out. There's some videos also to help identify these things, and I'll point those out later. But those are the 4 things you need for next week. Some of the other experiments will require a laptop computer or a thumb drive, and I will make sure that you're aware of those and when you'll need to bring them with you to class. This is the schedule of experiments. And again, this is up on Canvas. So we're up here on February 4th. It's our first meeting. We're starting with experiment 1 next week, determination of solution density. Each one of these experiments is described in the lab manual. They don't necessarily go chronologically, the order switches, but you'll see each one of these experiments in the lab manual. And you'll need to pay attention to the schedule to make sure you're preparing for the right experiment. Again, it's up on the syllabus. I'll tell you week to week, but be aware that the schedule does not necessarily follow the order of experiments in the lab manual. One other thing which I would point out to you is that you'll see sort of 3 blackout weeks. These are the weeks in which rejuvenation days are recurring. And so because lab is a multi-section course, which meets on different days, we've just decided to cancel lab for the entirety of that week. So you'll have some extended breaks in the middle of lab. And in fact, that's why we're having to sort of move this first meeting up. But hopefully that will be good to you and allow you a chance to sort of catch your breath and get your legs underneath you a bit. Last thing I'll point out to you on the schedule here is at the very end of the semester, there will be an online final exam. It meets outside of class. I'll give you details, but it's typically on a Monday evening. So that's Monday, May 10th. And you should add that one to your schedule to make sure you're aware. All right, any questions at this point before I move on? Okay, hearing none. How's your lab? How's your grade going to be determined in this course? Let me tell you about this. So associated with each lab are 2 assignments. The first is a pre-lab quiz, and the second is a lab report. I'll talk about each one of those. The pre-lab quiz can be completed after you read the experimental description in the lab manual. So once you get a copy of the lab manual, you'll find an experiment. There's a couple-page introduction. It gives you some background, what you're going to be doing. And after you read that, you will be able to complete this pre-lab quiz. The quiz is accessed and submitted on Canvas. These are all online quizzes, and so that's how you'll do it. They are due on the day the experiment is to be completed, 30 minutes before the start of lab. So if you were to look at the schedule, oops, I'm trying to move my Zoom thing, but that's okay. Next week, we're doing the determination of solution density experiment. We're going to figure out the density of a solution. Therefore, the pre-lab is due at 12:30 p.m. Next Thursday, February 11th. Those are the pre-lab quizzes. The other assignment is a lab report. So the lab report is a hard copy thing. It is found at the end of each experimental description in the lab manual. The idea here is that the lab report can be completed after you collect data in the lab. Sometimes it will require some additional analysis, like you have to make a graph, or there might be some short answer type of questions. Be aware that all of the graphs that you make in this course need to be computer generated. They're not plots that you're making in your notebook and sort of copying. They should be computer generated plots. The lab reports also assume that you can have correct use of units and significant figures. So if you need some review of those things and you're unsure of how they work, there's an introduction again in the lab manual, page 15. Check that out, but be aware that you'll be expected to use units and sig figs correctly. With all that information, the lab report is due 1 week after the lab is completed. So again, next week we're doing the density lab on the 11th. The lab report for the density lab is due the 18th, the following Thursday. In order to submit the labs, these are also going to be submitted online. So the idea is that you will hand write out on the report sheet various information and data. You'll generate a PDF file and then submit it on the Canvas Dropbox. And last semester, students didn't have a whole lot of problems generating PDF files from these things. Most students used a PDF generator app on their phone, and that works just fine. But if you have questions about how to do any of that, please let me know. So those are the lab reports and the pre-lab assignments. Are there any questions about either of those? Okay, sounds good. How does all of this tie together? So here's how your grade will actually be determined numerically. There are 10 labs. The lab reports are worth 100 points each, so that's 1,000 points. 10 pre-lab quizzes worth 25 points apiece. There's a notebook grade and a final exam. So you can see the relative weighting here. I've talked about these 2 assignments. In the interest of time and not sort of extending these Zoom sessions any longer than we have to, I will discuss the notebooks in class next week. So don't worry about the notebooks at this point. However, do bring your lab notebook with you next week. Right? You'll need to have it. With all of these weightings, here is where I estimate the grade cutoffs will fall. It's a traditional type scale, so 93 or above is an A, 90 is an A minus, 87 a B plus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a multi-section course, and so there is some curving at the end of the semester. These cutoffs may increase or decrease by as much as 3 percentage points. Last semester, I think They decreased by 1 or 2 percentage points down here at the bottom end of the scale. But this was a pretty accurate estimate of where the grade cutoffs fall. So I think you can use that reliably. I mentioned to you that in another life I worked in carpentry. And anyways, in carpentry, you often say that the details define the difference between average and outstanding work, right? So if you can make really nice cabinets or hide your nail marks or build a straight plumb wall, whatever it is, it's the details that define the difference between average and outstanding work. And I think the same thing is true in Chem Lab. If you want to be up here at the top end of the spectrum, you're going to need to nail all the details. And those are things like units and sig figs and getting things in on time and getting correct answers. All of those things you can do, but it does take some attention to detail to make it work. And so if that's important to you, just be aware of that. And if I can be helpful in that process, if you have questions, please let me know. All right, 2 last things, and then I think we'll go. How am I doing on time? 10:20, we're doing good. So the first is COVID. As I said, my general take on it is that we need to take care of each other this semester. In the context of Chem Lab, that means that we're going to follow community health guidelines, wear a mask at all times, practice physical distancing, and wash your hands. I usually recommend washing your hands as you come into lab. It's also a good idea to wash your hands as you leave lab. We're not going to have fixed stations inside of lab. You'll be moving around, and it's kind of like going to the supermarket. It all kind of works, but there's a little bit of a dance sometimes. So just be aware of where other people are. As I mentioned, if you're feeling unwell, if you were potentially exposed to COVID, if you're just kind of unsure of what's going on, send me a note and stay home. We can find ways for you to continue in the course and progress on, and this will help keep each other safe and take care of each other. 2 last things for next week that you need to be aware of. Maybe I should have said 3 here. So the first thing is, again, to obtain those required materials. Lab manual, lab notebook, safety goggles, lab coat. So get those 4 things. In the Start Here module of Canvas, you're required to watch 2 things. So the first is a video about preventing COVID transmission. I think it's short, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but you're required to watch that. You are also required to watch the online safety lecture and complete the safety quiz. So there are 2 videos, preventing COVID transmission, and an online safety lecture. The quiz you'll see is actually a hard copy. And the reason we need it in hard copy is for legal safety insurance reasons. So once you watch the quiz, once you watch the lecture, you'll click a link to take the safety quiz. The idea is that you will print that, complete it, and bring it with you next week. Bring the hard copy with you next week. We need that for legal insurance reasons, and if we don't have it, you can't start lab. So you need to make sure you bring that with you. I'll send you a reminder, but keep that on your radar screen. The other thing to be aware of is that right now, I think the Start Here module is the only one which you should be able to see once you do these 2 things. You watch the COVID transmission video and you complete the safety quiz, then everything else will open up. So you'll need to do those things to get into the pre-lab quiz and all of that kind of stuff. So those are the 2 things you need to do for next week. Reminder that the pre-lab quiz is also due, and to get all of your required materials. And I think that's essentially it, what I have for you. Yeah. Do you have questions about the course or what's next or anything else?
Wait, so the shop that we buy the lab manual at, it's just Sundance Books?
Yep, Sundance Books. It's on Main Street over by the Paul's Pizza. Let me see, I'll put it up there again. They print it for us at a very cheap rate. No, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. There it is. 106 Main Street. Yeah, it's up by Pizza Paul's, so you'll see it. But pop in there and tell them that you're taking CHEM119, the general chemistry lab, and they'll sell you what you need. I don't know exactly what it costs this semester, but it's usually 10 to 15 bucks. Any other questions? Okay, we'll call it a day then, 10:20. That was good. Get those things, take your safety quiz. If I'd actually recommend doing it now, just get it out of the way. We'll call it Chem Lab, and then you'll be ready to go for next week. So I will look forward to meeting you all in person, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, see you soon.
Actually, I have a really quick question.
Yeah.
I'm having some like technical difficulties, and I just want to double check what time lab was.
Okay. 8:30.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, bye.
All right, see ya.